Hi, in today's video we're going to take a look at using Ardour with jack and Pipewire and then sending the audio into OBS Studio. So you can see I have Ardour set up here, and what I'm going to do is take you through setting this up on Nixos and showing you how to enable jack with Pipewire, additional settings you need to add, as well as the packages you need to install, and go through setting up some things like searching for VST3 plugins and enabling the plugins, as you can see down here on the left hand side, and then piping the audio into OBS Studio using a jack input client. So first of all, what I'm going to do is switch across to my configuration for Nixos, and what I'll do is just pop back up here to the Pipewire section. And what you'll see is we have Pipewire enabled, also pulse, and then jack. So we have jack enabled equals true. Now there's a couple of other settings we want to set down here, which are these ones. We want security RT kit enabled equals true, and then some PAM settings for memory management. So this basically sets up the memory management for Ardour. If you want a different system, typically what you would do is use something like it's the login conf.d, I think, and you can actually set the memory to unlimited. So after you've set the options in your configuration.nix here, which were basically just adding jack here, and then this section here with security RT kit enabled and the PAM settings, what you want to do is actually install the packages. So these are the packages that I'm using, and you can install these manually if you're on a different system. But what we have here is we've got Ardour listed in our home.nix using Home Manager, and a couple of plugins. What we have is the LSP plugins. Where's LSP? Yeah, LSP plugins. That's the Linux plugins. We then have noise repellent, which I'm not actually using in this video. And the most important one down here is the RN noise plugin. So if I come across to Nix packages, I'll just show you what this plugin is, RN noise. The actual name for the plugin that you want to install is noise suppressant for voice. And what this does is it actually cuts out fan noise from your computer. Now, there is actually an issue with this plugin that I found. It provides several different versions, VST2, VST3, and LV2. And by default, Ardour actually only searches the directory where the LV2 plugin was installed. It doesn't search the directory where Nixos installs the VST plugins. And we need to use the VST plugin because the LV2 plugin doesn't actually work. It introduces a lot of clicks and pops. But first of all, what I'm going to do is actually show you how you enable jack and Pipewire in Ardour. So if you come up to the window here and go to Audio MIDI Setup, what you'll see is you have a little drop down here, which I won't change while I'm recording. And what I've done is I've set this to jack and Pipewire. Now, the interesting thing about Nixos is once you've actually got this set up, you don't have to run jack on the command line and then use qjackctl to set up the routing. It does it automatically, which is a nice advantage. If you're on a different system, you may actually have to do some extra work. You may have to manually start the jack server and set the input and outputs using qjackctl. But what I want to show you is actually the plugins. So if we come to new plugin selector, this is where you can actually install the plugins. And if I search for RN noise, what you'll see is there's a couple of different versions listed here. There's the LV2 version, and then there's the VST3 version. This is the version we need to use. So what I need to do is actually come into the plugin manager if I can remember where it is. So there's actually a section somewhere in here where you can actually set the plugin manager to search for particular plugins directories. And of course, I can't actually find where this is now. View window, plugin manager. Okay, so window plugin manager. Let me just move this back to the other screen. And what you'll see here is the preferences, and you'll see this VST3 path here. Now, if you're on NixOS, what you need to do is click this directory, and you can see here, I've actually put in the path to the directory here. So what you do is you click the add button, and this comes up with a file manager like this. And what you need to do is make sure show hidden files is on, and then go into your home directory. You'll see Nix profile, lib. If we scroll down here, you'll see VST3. So what you do is you select that, and that will add in the path to the VST3 directory. What you then need to do is actually run discover new updated or rescan all. And what this will do is this will rescan the directories where it searches for plugins, and you'll see that the VST plugins will now show up. So what I've got here is a selection of plugins that I've installed. So what I'm going to do is actually disable all the plugins and then go through and enable them one by one so you can hear the difference. Okay, you should hear the fan noise kicking in now. So this is the noise suppressant plugin, and it keeps opening on the other screen. So what you can see here is it's currently disabled. If I enable it, that should cut out the fan noise. And by default, this will actually be set to about 60. It'll be set to 60, 20 and 0. And what I found is with the defaults, it did actually affect the vocals a bit. So just having it at 5 or 10 will actually cut out the fan noise. So let me just come back in here. So what you do is you go new plugin, plugin selector, RN noise, and make sure to select the VST3 version. So you select it, double click it, and then you go add insert plugin. And you want to have the plugins installed before the fader. So next what we've got is the noise gate. So here's the noise gate. I'll enable this now. And you could see it's cut out a lot of the background noise. It'll cut out a lot of the clicks and key presses on your keyboard. So this is going to depend on your setup. So what we have here is the attack, which I've set to 3.75, 3.57 rather. And what I'd recommend is having a look at Unfa's channel, UNFA. Does a lot of good work with Ardour, and he's got a lot of good tutorials that will take you through some of these settings. So what I've got here is the attack, the threshold. So this is the threshold where the audio is going to be cut off, and the zone adjusts this little slope here, you can see. So this is the noise gate to cut out clicks, low level noise. And the important thing is you want to have the noise suppressant before the noise gate, because what happens if you don't have a noise suppressant on before the noise gate, what will happen is every time you talk, you'll actually hear the fan noise kick in as well. So I don't know if I can just show you that. So if I turn this off, you can hear the fan noise come in. And what you should hear is as I'm talking that you can hear the fan noise, but when I stop talking, you don't hear the fan noise. So it's really irritating because every time you talk, you'll actually hear the fan noise coming through as well. So we'll enable the RO noise there. So that's the gate. Then we have the equalizer. So this is the equalizer that we've got here. So what we're doing is we have a high pass filter here. You can see this slope here, and this is cutting out all the low-level noise that would normally come through that we don't want. And at the other end, what we have is a low pass. So this is the low pass. So it's actually the reverse. High pass cuts out the low level and low pass cuts out the high level, if you get my drift. So this will cut out the high level noise and the low level noise. And then what we have here is a couple of bell curves, and these can be used to pull down particular frequencies in your voice, and this is going to depend on your vocals and your setup. So what you can actually do is change the type to bell here, and what you have down here is the Q, and the Q determines the actual length of the dip, the width of the dip here. And what you actually do is you increase the gain and you scan across the frequencies to pull down particular frequencies. So you scan with the gain up and you can hear particular frequencies that sound bad, and then you can actually go down and pull them down. And what we have here is a little reverse. We've got a bell increasing the high level parts of your voice to sound a bit, make it sound a bit clearer. So again, these settings are going to depend on your voice and your setup, but having a high pass and a low pass filter to cut out the low level and high level noise is a good start. So if I turn this on, you should be able to hear the difference. I should have mentioned I didn't have it on there. So you can see this is the equalizer on and then the equalizer off. So after that, we have a multiband compressor. So we have the multiband compressor here. And what I'm doing is I'm actually increasing the signal a bit by 12 decibels, the input level, because by default, it was coming in about 24. So increasing the input boosts up the signal a bit. And then what we have here is the ratio of the compression. So we've got these three lines. So you can actually drag these three lines around, 1, 2, 3, to isolate particular frequencies and then apply gain to them, as you can see down here. Okay, so that's the multiband compressor. So multiband compressor, is that not coming on? Okay, yeah, so that's coming on now. So that's the multiband compressor on. So that should boost up the levels of the audio a bit. After that, we've got the compressor. Right, okay, that's just kicking in now. And as you can see, I've got this off at the moment. Okay, so we have the compressor enabled here. As you can see, that's now enabled. We have the knee, we have a bit of makeup here to 5, the threshold, the time, and these are all set to the default settings. So this will compress the audio after the multiband compressor. So if I close that, what I have here finally is the limiter. So this is the limiter. So what you can do is actually put a slight limit to pull down by 1 decibel, which is the required audio levels for YouTube. So what I want to actually do is take you through the routing. So what I have here is, if I switch back to the other screen, you can see here I have OBS Studio. And what we've got here is the jack input client. So if you come down here, so you can select jack input client, and what you do is just leave it at the default here. I should have set this to 1 channel actually, my bad. But if I switch back to the view of Ardour over here, what you need to do is actually open up Ardour and then open up OBS Studio with the jack input client set. And if you come down to the little section down here, what you can see is the routing grid. So once you've actually enabled the jack input client in OBS Studio, what will happen is in the external section here, you will see that this will by default be empty. And what you need to do is click in both of these sections here, and this will set up the routing from Ardour to OBS Studio. Now, the other thing that you want to do is actually, you can see I'm not recording as I'm using this. You can record by clicking the record button and play, and it will actually record the audio as you're going along. But the important thing is what you need to do is have in selected. So this is monitoring input. Now, if you don't have monitoring input selected, what will happen is the audio won't be routed from Ardour into OBS Studio. But the issue is with in selected, monitor input selected, you will actually be able to hear your voice back through your headphones, which personally I find really distracting, being able to talk and hear yourself at the same time. So what you need to do is actually have a way to have the monitoring input selected, but not hear the output. So the way that you do that, if you come down to the routing grid again, come to hardware, by default, these two will be selected here. And what this does is this actually sets the monitoring device in Ardour so that you can hear what you're saying coming back through your headphones. So what you need to do is actually deselect these two and have in selected. And once you've done that, the audio will be routed from Ardour into OBS Studio, but you won't actually hear your voice coming back. Now, I actually had an issue with this not working. And what I needed to do was actually install, let's see what it's called again, QPW graph. And what this is it's a patch bay for Pipewire, similar to QJack CTL. And as you can see, this is a graph showing all the connections for the audio and how it's actually routed. I haven't actually changed any of this, but what I found was until I installed this application, the monitoring was still coming out of Ardour. I don't have this running or anything, but once, I don't know if it was just one of those things where you do something and suddenly something works, but once I had that installed, I was actually able to have the input selected here, monitor input, and the hardware deselected here for the monitoring device, so that the audio was being routed from Ardour into OBS Studio. So that was one thing that's actually a bit of a gotcha, actually getting the routing set up properly. Now, as I said, when I've done this exact same thing on FreeBSD, which uses a different sound system using Jack, what I had to do, which I've actually got a video on, was start Jack on the command line, then start QJack CTL, and actually set up the routing grid manually. Now, I don't know if on different Linux distributions you still have to do the same thing, but at least on Nixos, once you've actually set the audio MIDI setup here and set it to Jack Pipewire and restarted, you don't actually need to start Jack on the command line or use QJack CTL. So it's a lot simpler, and it's a better workflow because you don't actually have to muck about with stuff every time you want to get this working. Basically, all you need to do once you have this set up properly is you open Ardour, then you open OBS Studio with the Jack input client. The only thing you actually need to do before you start recording is go to the routing grid, go to external and check the two little boxes here. You can see this is saying jack input client, OBS Studio, and that is the jack input client plugin that we enabled in OBS Studio. And what it will then do is actually route the audio from Ardour into OBS Studio without any other setup. So you change the routing grid, make sure that's selected monitor input. And once you've done that, if I switch back to OBS Studio here, you'll see the jack input client and you'll actually see the audio coming through. Now, another issue I actually had was with the desktop audio. So in OBS Studio, if I can come to the settings, audio, you can see global audio devices, desktop audio default. And what the desktop audio does is that actually captures audio from applications that are currently playing audio, such as a browser playing YouTube. And what I found was what was happening was it was actually capturing the input from the jack client as well. So because jack is using Pipewire, what seemed to happen was it was capturing the audio from jack here, but also duplicating it with the desktop audio. And it said it only stopped doing that after I'd installed QWP graph I showed you a minute ago. It stopped doing that. So what I'm going to do is actually switch across to YouTube. So what we've got here is a video of Rubinstein. Let's see if we can play that.
Could have been.
Set that back to the laptop. Okay, so when I play this, what you'll notice is it will start playing it will capture the video and actually also capture the audio.
Was hoped to be a bargain fee, might not be quite so easy, and an update as Newcastle.
Okay, and what also I have is
again,
audio jack, audio ducking enabled. So what I want to do is actually switch back to OBS Studio. I'll just play the video without showing it so you can see the levels for the desktop audio.
Still looking at Mark Gahey.
Okay.
Yes, guys, how's it going?
And if I start talking, it will bring the volume down. So what I have here enabled is audio ducking. So if I come across to the desktop and go to filters, what I've done is add a compressor, and I've called the compressor ducking. And I got this tip from the Gaming Careers YouTube channel about setting up ducking. So what ducking does is it actually reduces the level of one audio source based on another one. So what we have here is this ducking is added to the desktop audio. We pull the ratio down to 4, the attack to 50, and the release to 500. And the important thing you need to do is actually select jack input client here. And what that does is when the desktop audio is playing and I start talking, it will actually reduce the level of the desktop audio so that you can actually hear what I'm saying. So if I just switch back to over here. So this was, as I said, an issue that I had with desktop audio and Pipewire and jack, whereas for some reason what was happening was as I was playing, as I was talking, it was actually coming through the desktop audio as well. But if I start playing this, you can see as I start talking, it will bring the audio volume down. Sorry, I find it a bit difficult to listen to something and talk at the same time. But I just wanted to show you the desktop audio actually working with Ardour and jack and Pipewire as well. So that was another issue that, as I said, I came across, and I don't know if it was just a coincidence, but as soon as I installed QPW graph, as you can see here, all those issues actually stopped occurring that I was having. I didn't actually have it running or anything, but I don't know, as I said, if it's just one of those things that you do something that's completely unrelated and suddenly stuff starts working. Now, the other issue I wanted to mention is specific to NixOS, is when you do an update, when you do like a home manager switch -- flake and update your flake, what I found was happening was that all the plugins stopped working. They were showing up. Let me see if it's the plugin selector. No, we need the other one. So window plugin manager. Bring this back across. So what was happening was when I was actually doing an update, what happened was it suddenly said, I can't find all these plugins. So if you may run into a similar issue on another Linux distribution of you actually doing an update, updating the plugins and stuff, and it's suddenly saying, I can't find all the plugins. So what will happen is you will see listed here, it will say stale. Okay, it will say stale. And what you need to do is actually click this button that's grayed out, says clear stale scan log. And that will actually remove the stale versions of the plugins. What you then need to do is actually do discover new updated or rescan all. And what it will do is actually rescan the directories for the plugins, and they will actually show up again and you'll be able to use them. So that's just another issue with Ardour and the plugins, is that sometimes you can do an update and you'll suddenly go, oh my God, all the plugins I've set up, spending ages of time configuring are not working. And as I said, the issue is they'll show up stale. Basically, you run clear stale scan log, discover new updated or rescan all, I think it is. And that will actually scan the directories again and actually pick up the plugins. And once you've done that, they will be working again. And as I said, on NixOS, what you need to do, you may need to do this on another Linux distribution. Typically, the default location on other Linux distributions will be ~/.vst3. And Ardour may search for those plugins by default. But at least on NixOS, what you have to do, as I said, is add in the path, which will be your home user directory, .-nix profile, .nix-profile lib_vst3. And once you've done that, you do a rescan all and it will actually pick up the VST3 plugins. And as I said, the reason you need to do this is because the RN noise suppressant plugin, which is using, I think it's RN noise or RN noise NU, which is the exact same audio plugin used by OBS Studio for noise reduction. The LV2 version doesn't work, but the VST3 version does. So that's why you need to set up the VST3 plugins. Also, another thing to note is if I come across to Nix profile lib VST3, VST3, the actual path to the plugins is slightly different than you'll get on things like LV2 or VST3. You actually have a, you can see here we've got rnnoise.vst3 contents x86_64-Linux. And I just need to do that. And then you'll see rnnoise.so. So you actually need the full path here, rnnoise.vst3 contents x86 Linux, and then the plugin. So don't be tempted just to put the rnnoise.so file in the VST directory. So as I said, if you're on a different Linux distribution and you'd created a VST3, a .vst3 plugins directory in your home folder, don't just copy the rnnoise.so file into that directory. You actually need to put in the full path here. Or the plugin should actually come with this directory structure, and you need to put that directory structure in the VST3 directory. Once you've done that, the plugins will actually show up. So I think that's pretty much most of the things I wanted to cover with Ardour. The other thing I should mention is you actually want to put the, see, we've got the master here and we've got the audio 1 track. And what you want to do is actually put the plugins in this track here as opposed to the master, because as you can see, the difference between these two tracks is this has a little record button, whereas the master doesn't. And if you've put them in the wrong thing here, what you can actually do is you can actually come across here, select one and do cut, and then go to the correct track and then just do paste. You see paste deselected because I haven't got anything selected there. So if you've put all the plugins in the master one here, what you can actually do is say just go through, right click on them, do cut, come to the audio one and do paste to paste them all in. And you want to have all these plugins before the fader down here. Now, another thing I should mention is the levels you want to get for YouTube are typically about -3 for the peaks. So that's the peaks in the audio. And what you can do is you can drag this up here to actually, if you're recording, so you can actually see the waveform a bit bigger. But you want to have the peaks coming in about -3, and you want to have a LUFS of about -14. I managed to get this to about -16, which is pretty much good enough. But what I wanted to mention is you can, if you want to adjust the gain, you can adjust the levels on the tracks. But the issue with that is that also adjusts the peaks. And what that then does is it actually will actually set the peaks to go beyond the recommended limit for YouTube. Now, what you can do is if you actually record the audio, what you can do is you can come to export. So you've got two things. You've got loudness assistant and export. If you go export to audio files, what you'll see is there's an only analyze button. And if you click that, it will go through the audio and it will actually analyze it and tell you where the peaks are coming in and what the loudness of the audio is, the LUFS value is, so that you can actually get a good idea of where your audio is coming in. So it's a good idea to actually record a bit of audio and then basically run either the loudness assistant or export it. So you don't actually have to export it. You can just click only analyze and it will analyze the audio and actually give you a graph, and it will actually show you at the bottom, it has a list of targets that is trying to match. So it'll list things like Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, and it will actually show you like an X, red X, if the audio is incompatible with that service, or a little speaker icon if it's okay, or a tick if it's bang on. So that's just another little tip. So what I'll do is I'll just give you a quick recap. So first of all, for Nixos, what we did, where's the Pipewire? So in Nixos, in our configuration.nix, we had jack enabled true under Pipewire. And then these two sections here, security.rtkit enabled equals true, and the PAM settings for memory management. There is also a Nixos Pipewire. Was it jack? Let me have a look. Maybe under jack, actually. Okay. So this is where I actually got some of the settings from. There's also an option on Nixos to add a module called Nix. As you can see down here on this Nixos wiki jack page. And what this does is it actually enables a real-time kernel. But the issue is it will actually rebuild the kernel and all the modules. And I didn't want to do that because I'm actually using ZFS on this system. And sometimes there's an issue with compatibility of the kernels with the ZFS setup, and I didn't want to risk breaking my file system. So that is just me being extra cautious, but you can enable this Nix option here, which will actually enable a real-time kernel. So that's something else you could have a look at. And as I said, the packages that we're using were the real-time noise suppressant plugin, as you can see down here. And as I said, remember to use the VST3 version because the LV2 version doesn't work. And the other packages I was using was the LSP plugins. LSP plugins. So if I come across to the home page here. So if you want to install the plugin manually, okay, let me just turn off the ad blocking. So this is the Linux Studio plugins, collection of open source plugins. And you can see those were the plugins I was using for the compressor, the equalizer. So you can see here a nice screenshot of all the plugins that we've actually got here. So the equalizer, the compressor, the multiband compressor, the noise gate. And as I said, these will all show either LV2 or VST3 plugins. And when there was a VST3 plugin, that was the one I was using instead of the LV2 plugin. So those are the basically two sets of plugins that I'm using, the noise suppressant and the Linux Studio plugins. And again, in my home manager.config, home manager, home, we had Ardour installed, the LSP plugins, and the package is actually called RN Noise plugin on Nixos, and that corresponds to the noise suppressant for voice plugin. So that was the setup for Nixos. And again, what you need to do to switch to using Pipewire and jack, you come across to audio MIDI setup, set the audio system to jack and Pipewire. Right, and the next thing that you need to remember to do is you open OBS Studio. So you can see it here, OBS Studio. You click here to jack input client. And I should have set this to 1, but you don't need to start the jack server. So after you've enabled the jack input server, the jack input client rather in OBS Studio, what you need to do is come across to the routing grid, external, and select the inputs going into OBS Studio. You then need to come across to the hardware and deselect these two options so that you're not actually hearing the audio coming back through your headphones as you're recording in Ardour. So those are the setups to actually get everything working, get the audio coming out of Ardour into OBS Studio, and also disabling monitoring so that you don't actually hear the audio coming back through your headphones as you're talking, because it's really distracting. So hopefully that helps you get Ardour set up with Pipewire and jack and actually get it to come into OBS Studio. And the reason why you might want to do this is because, as you see, if I come back to OBS Studio and I'll come into the filters, all these filters in OBS Studio don't have a nice GUI. They tend to be just sliders. Yeah. Whereas on Ardour, as I say, if I come back across here, you have a nice GUI, so you can actually see the audio signal. You can pull stuff down. It's a lot nicer. So the problem is, as you can see, this is a VST3 plugin. Whereas OBS Studio only has support for VST2 plugins, so those plugins won't actually work in OBS Studio. So that's the sort of the issue we're trying to work around, is the support for VST plugins in OBS Studio is a bit lacking, and it can be a bit of a pain to use the built-in ones because they're not really as nice. They're just general sliders. You can't actually see the audio waveform, so you kind of got no idea, apart from looking at the meters in OBS Studio, what's really going on. And what I wanted to do was basically have a nice set of plugins. I wanted to have noise suppressant, a noise gate, an equalizer to pull out certain frequencies, and a compressor, and then send the audio into OBS Studio. Instead of using the built-in OBS plugins or having to apply the different audio effects in a video editor like Davinci Resolve. So you could use Davinci Resolve and process the audio after by adding similar plugins such as an equalizer, a compressor and everything. But I just wanted to make things a bit simpler. And what I'm doing is actually, if I switch back across here, Scene Collection, Prores, what I'm actually doing is I'm recording using ProRes and WAV. I don't know if I can show you these settings while this is recording. Output, recording. Okay. So what we have here is the settings that I'm actually using in OBS Studio. So what we have here is recording custom output FFmpeg. And what you see here is the video encoder ProRes, Apple ProRes. Profile equals 2. Audio encoder PCM underscore S16LE, PCM signed 16 little endian. Now, the reason I'm actually doing this is because I still may want to edit the video after I've recorded it with OBS Studio. I may just want to, quickly do a quick couple of edits and then export it. So the issue is with OBS Studio, you can use mvenc encoding to actually record the video and audio as H.264 AAC. But unfortunately, the free version of Davinci Resolve on Linux doesn't support H.264 or AAC audio. So you'd actually have to convert the footage from OBS Studio into ProRes anyway. So that's the problem, is that you could record as H.264, but then you'd have to convert it to ProRes, bring it into Davinci Resolve, and then after you've exported it, actually convert it back to H.264 or H.265 video, which would lead to a loss in quality. So what I do, as I said, is I'm recording as ProRes video with a WAV audio file, and that allows me to take this footage that I'm actually recording right now into Davinci Resolve rather, without having to convert the footage. So once I've got the footage into Davinci Resolve and exported it, what you can do is actually, you can't export the footage as H.264 or H.265. You have to export it as ProRes again. So what I do, make files H.264. Right. So once I've actually exported the footage from Davinci Resolve, I then need to compress the ProRes video and WAV audio into H.265 video and AAC audio. Now, you could use a tool like Handbrake for doing this, or FFmpeg on the command line. But the issue is, with those tools, you usually only have access to the AAC audio encoder. There's two different types of audio encoder for AAC. There's the generic AAC audio encoder, which is included with FFmpeg and some tools like Handbrake. But there's also fdkaac, which is produced by the, I believe the pronunciation is Fraunhofer group. It was done quite a few years ago, but this actually gives you much better AAC audio than the built-in standard AAC audio filter you'll get with FFmpeg. Now, the issue is with FFmpeg, to actually use the FDK AAC audio, you have to manually build FFmpeg with that particular audio library because of licensing issues, it can't be included with the default FFmpeg. So what I do is I actually have a Makefile, as you can see here. And what this does is this allows me to run make input equals and then the name of the video file. And what this will actually do, is, if I come through here, is what we have here is input equals input.wav. So this is the default name. So what you do is you put the Makefile in the same directory as the video. You then just run make input equals, and then the name of the video to process. What we have here is what are called phony targets. So you'll see down here, there are all these things like all fdkaac, pass 1, pass 2. And what this option does is it actually prevents you from accidentally running those commands directly. So we define them as phony. And what you'll see down here is all targets, so all combined. So combine is the final command that we're actually going to be running. So what a Makefile does is it allows you to specify a series of commands to be run in order, one after another, to process things. So what you'll see down here is the first command, fdkaac input. And this input here, as you can see, refers to this section, input. And that's going to be the video file that we're going to process. So make input equals the name of the video. So it requires a video input. And what you'll see here is it's going to say, when we run the script, it would say extracting audio and compressing with fdkaac. And what we have here is the actual command. And this @ sign in front of the FFmpeg command, what it actually does is actually hides the command. So it's not actually output. It will output the command as it's running, but it won't actually print this out in the terminal, as it were. So what we have here is FFmpeg hide banner stats v panic. And what that does is typically when you run FFmpeg, it will come up and say FFmpeg version built with, and then a load of the libraries that it's built with. We then have -i input. So that's going to be -i input. It's going to be the video file. -vn means no video. So VN is actually saying we're not going to be processing the video track. Format caf dash, and then this pipe. So what this does is it actually takes the audio from the video file and pipes it into fdkaac with these options here, as you can see. And at the end we have this dash, and what the dash is meaning is it's standard input. So this will use FFmpeg to just take the audio file, the audio track, pipe it into fdkaac with these options and create output.aac. So rather than, we don't actually have to manually extract the video, the audio track as a WAV and then compress it. We can just actually pipe it directly into fdkaac. What we then have is video pass 1. And you can see here, video pass 1 fdkaac. So this is the, I think it's called the prerequisite. So what this is saying is this command depends on this command being run first. So you can see fdkaac depends on the video input. Pass1 depends on this command having been run. And what we're doing here is we're actually using the x265 library. Now you can install x265 manually and use that on the command line, but the issue is you use x265 on the command line, it requires raw video files, which are absolutely massive. So if you have a 20 gig ProRes file and you convert it to a raw file, it's going to increase 10 times to about 200 gig. And we don't want to do that because that's kind of defeats the point. We want to actually compress the ProRes file and not actually increase it 10 times before we compress it. So what we have here is ffmpeg-y, and the -y means it can overwrite a previous file. We hide the banner, and what you can see here is we got -i input, so that's the video file. -an basically means we're not processing the audio track, we're just processing the video track. And what you'll see here is -c:\v, and that's the video codec we're going to use, which is libx265. And then what you can see here is we've got the x265 parameters. So what we're doing here is setting the bit rate here and the keyframes, okay, and target bit rate, no slow first one pass. And what this is doing is it's doing a 2-pass encode. What it's going to do is it's actually going to go through the video and analyze it first of all before it does the second pass and actually compresses the video. So it analyzes everything to get the statistics needed to compress it in the second stage. What we then have is the PIX format YUV 420p, which is what we need for YouTube and other services. Preset slow, and again we're specifying the bit rate here, even though we've actually specified it up here as well. What we then have is format MP4 and then null. And what this does is it actually creates a file called null, which is used with the second pass. So this is the second pass of the encode. So we have pass 2. You can see here pass 1. So pass 2 has a prerequisite, I believe it's called, as I said, of pass 1. So pass 2 has to have this command run first. We then run a similar command here, you can see. And the difference is these two options here. We have -move flags -fast start output.mp4. Fast start actually sets what's called the iPod atom, I think it's called, at the beginning of the file, and this is required for streaming videos. So if you remember back in the day, you used to get people uploading things like AVI files to the internet, and what would happen is you go to play the AVI file and it would have to load the entire file before it could actually start playing, because AVI files and the codecs they use weren't designed to be streamed on the internet. And so the whole file would have to load up before you can actually play it. So the fast start option actually sets this iPod atom at the beginning of the file, saying, okay, this file can actually be streamed. So it will actually progressively download in the browser as it's loading up. So you'll see it load up, the progress bar, and you can actually start playing it. So what we've now got is we've got the output.mp4. We've previously created the output.aac. So we've got two separate files here. We've got the output.aac, which is the audio file compressed with fdkaac, and the video track that has had a 2-pass x265 codec applied to it to create the output.mp4. So the next step is we actually need to combine those two files into a new container. So that's why we have this combine option down here. So this is the last command. So if you remember up at the top here, what we had is all targets. And what this basically means is it has to go through all these options down here, FDK, AAC, pass 1, pass 2, and combine is the last command that is actually going to run. So let's have a look at how we actually combine audio and video into a new container. So what we have here is echo combining audio and video. This will be printed, whereas this @ in front of the ffmpeg command won't actually print out this command in the terminal. It will actually display the output of the command. So what we have here again is hide banner stats-v panic, and that hides the big ffmpeg command help, or whatever you want to call it, saying ffmpeg built on, version with all these options. So we don't need to see that. What we then have is -i output.mp4, -i output.aac. And what we're actually doing here is we've got -c:(a copy -c:(v copy. And what this is basically doing is it's saying, okay, take the video input, the audio input, and just copy the codec. So it's not re-encoding anything. It's just taking those two video and audio files and combining them into a new file. What we then have is the map option. So we have map 0:0 and map 1:0. And what this does is this actually maps these two files to an audio and a video track. After that, we have the PIX format YUV420, which you're going to need for having video that will play on things like YouTube or regular video players like QuickTime or MPV. They'll require that format. Again, we have the fast start option, -fmp4. So it's creating an MP4 container. And then we have combined output. So this is the file that's actually going to be created. It's going to create a file called combined-output.mp4. What you'll see down here is this clean option. So what this does is, suppose you've run the script and you're not satisfied for whatever reason. You can actually run make clean, and it will actually prompt you to remove all the files apart from the original video file that you processed to clean up the directory. So it will remove the combined output.mp4 we created, the null file, the output.aac, the output.mp4, and the log files for the 2-pass video encode. And then it will say make cleanup complete. So basically the way that you use this is if I just copy this to the desktop, okay, and switch across over here, video. So I've got a video directory here. We've moved the Makefile into the video directory. Okay, CD video. What I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cheat. I'm not going to compress a video while I'm actually recording with OBS Studio and Ardour, because it will tax my CPU. So if I just run touch video.mov, okay, so this isn't a real video file. This is just a file with a .mov extension. So what I would do is I would run make input, and you can press tab and it will complete video.mov. Just press return. It's going to go through and extract the audio file as output AAC using the fdkaac codec. It will then go through and do a 2-pass video encode on the video track, and it will combine the audio file and the video file into a new container. And because we're doing a 2-pass encode, typically it runs about it runs sort of in real time. It will, if you've got, say, a 10-minute video, okay, what it's going to do, it's going to do a 2-pass encode. So the first pass is going to take 10 minutes. The second pass is going to take another 10 minutes. So typically it's going to take twice the length of the video to actually compress it. So as I said, if you've got an hour's worth of ProRes footage that you're converting from Davinci Resolve, is actually going to take 2 hours to actually compress it. Of course, you could just do a 1-pass encode, but you'll get a better result using a 2-pass encode using X265. So X265 will give you a better output than X264. It'll be a smaller file size and better quality. So this is just the workflow that I'm actually using for recording stuff with OBS Studio, getting it into Davinci Resolve, doing a quick edit, exporting it as ProRes, and then actually compressing the file. And as I said, the reason why I wanted to do this was because I wanted to use the fdkaac codec as opposed to the standard AAC codec that you'll get with FFmpeg. So I'll put links to all this under the video and hope that helps you get set up with Ardour and Pipewire and Jack, get the audio into OBS Studio, bring the footage from OBS Studio into Davinci Resolve by recording as ProRes. The only difference between recording as ProRes and MVenc is, of course, using ProRes is going to be using your CPU as opposed to the GPU. But the issue with MVenc encoding is actually the bit rate it's going to record at. You'll actually get lower quality. It will record faster, but you'll get lower quality. So that's why I'm recording as ProRes. So as I said, record directly as with ProRes with OBS Studio. That allows me to bring it into Davinci Resolve without recompressing it and losing quality. I then edit the footage and export it as ProRes, and then just drop the Makefile into the directory with the video, run make input equals the name of the video, leave it to chunder away for an hour or two, and it's going to spit out the new compressed video that I can upload to YouTube. So I'll put links to all this, as I said, under the video, and hope that helps out.